So the Nets get game one. We'll have to see with James Harden and the hamstring. I think it's a pretty big blown opportunity for the Bucks to not get this game, given that Harden was only out there for a minute, of course. The obvious thing to say is the Bucks did not make their threes, and the Nets did. Joe Harris, which that one's normal. Blake Griffin, which is a little more iffy. Brook Lopez just wasn't really paying attention to him on the perimeter, which you have to do. Even if Harden is out, it's still so tough to defend everyone on this Nets team, given, KD, Kyrie, Joe Harris, one other guy, whether it's Bruce Brown cutting, Shamet who can shoot, and whoever else they might have out there. So Blake feasted on those. Brook at least kind of closed out to him. On the other end, Chris Middleton missed shots that we expect him to make. Some of them were catch and shoots. He had that one spin post up on Kyrie that was a miss. And, Middleton, I still do think sometimes the Bucks ask him to create a little too much. That said, I do think the moments where Giannis was setting a screen in this game were pretty effective. And to think about Giannis and how the Nets guarded him, they started with Blake, which I talked about in my prediction. I didn't think it was going to be right away. And eventually it was Bruce Brown who was on him, and, Giannis bailed him out with a couple jump shots, but he also made a fair share of his jump shots tonight. To me, the biggest thing is him just setting screens. That's that. I think Giannis pretty much played how you'd expect him to play in this one. I don't think he did anything too disappointing. I guess the only disappointing thing could have been his minutes. For what it ends up as, whatever, the game was over like midway fourth. But there were stretches of this game where Kyrie and KD had like 6 to 8 more minutes played than Giannis. So hopefully Budenholzer isn't going back to that. Because if he is, and Giannis is going to be finishing these games at like 37, 38 minutes played, then I just don't think he's given them a real chance to win. I know they ask Giannis to do a lot, but that's just not going to work. Drew also missed a few pull-up jumpers and pick and rolls. Those are the main things that I remember. To talk about KD and Kyrie in this one, in the first half, it was a lot of mid-range stuff for KD, whether it was just an ISO on PJ Tucker. There was that one where it was kind of weird that KD managed to knock over PJ Tucker with not too much force, but it happened and he made that one. And eventually, he started getting going. He had that play where he drew the foul on Giannis. He had the ISO on Giannis that was a 3, and he also had an ISO on Giannis that resulted in, it was like a floater that he made over Giannis or whatever. And with Kyrie, there wasn't much struggle for Kyrie in this one. An interesting thing with Kyrie was he had a couple of cut plays. One was when they double-teamed KD on the baseline, and there was another one where Kyrie cut. I don't remember. It wasn't off of a Kevin Durant double-team. It was kind of early in a possession. He got a shot off of that. Besides that, he had 1-3 over Middleton. He had a catch-and-shoot 3 over, I think, like Bryn Forbes or something. He had a crazy left-handed bank shot over Brook Lopez. And that's something to talk about with Brook in this series. There was a moment in the third quarter where the Nets just started going at him again and again. There were 2 KD pull-up mid-rangers. I think there were 2. There was a Joe Harris handoff from Blake into an easy pull-up mid-range. There was the one where Brook committed a little too hard to, it was either KD or Kyrie, I don't remember which one. And then it resulted in Blake just getting an easy dunk at the rim. And sure, I know Brook on the other end, like he was grabbing offensive rebounds. There were times when they got it to him in the post. He had that one where he had like a reverse dunk with Blake not being able to do too much. And, Brook definitely had a presence as a scorer inside. So that's going to be a push and pull all series. But the Nets clearly got some easy baskets going at Brook Lopez in this game. And I think as the series goes along, we could see that more and more. I think KD has that in the back of his head where he's just like, yeah, I can get my pull-up mid-range off over Brook every single time. Besides that, I think the Nets were not covering PJ Tucker that much. He had 4 threes, but I think there were a decent amount of possessions where they just kind of didn't care about him pretty much. We'll have to see if, as the series goes, Is he cutting? Is he just going to stand there and hopefully make some? Are the Bucks just going to forget he's there entirely? I don't know. I felt like the other Nets guys, even besides Blake, played pretty all right. Like Bruce Brown had some cut plays. Mike James had at least one step back three. He also had a layup where he was able to get downhill. I think it was off of a screen. I don't remember exactly. The Bucks are, of course, going to have to clean up that. Like the Mike James step back, okay, but you can't allow that type of guy to kill you around the rim. There was, of course, the infamous Blake Griffin double team on the three-point line when he was switched on to, like, Connaughton. I don't really know why they did that. I'll take that matchup over somebody being open. So, yeah, like, again, the easy thing to say is, well, the Bucks, they shot 17% from three. They're not going to do that again. And, yeah, sure, they're not going to again. But I do think there were some other things in this game that are not a great sign, especially because, again, like, James Harden was not out there. And that'll be, of course, a thing, but still, this was a big opportunity for the Bucks to get a 1-0 lead. Also, another thing that I felt like with the Bucks, their rotation is suddenly like kind of trash. Jeff Teague played 12 minutes. Like, what the hell is that? Bryn Forbes, I mean, he's a defensive liability. So even if he is making his threes, which he was not tonight, that's a fear. Bobby Portis, all right, solid. Connaughton, I don't think Connaughton's that great. I mean, he can make a couple open threes and he tries his best, but he just kind of is what he is. It just seems like the Bucks suddenly have like 5 guys they can go to, or 6 with Portis, I guess. So maybe even if Brook Lopez is getting torched, they might just have to keep him out there. And again, he did do a lot on offense, so I don't want to imply that Brook was terrible in this. He wasn't even bad, to be honest, but I just think it's something that could be bigger for the Nets as the series goes along. I guess the last thing to think about would be some of the defensive matchups. I mentioned the Blake on Giannis thing earlier. You know, Drew had some possessions on Kyrie. I don't know if it affected Kyrie that much. They started the game with Giannis defending Kyrie, which I did not even really think about as a possibility. I don't think it was a whole lot of the game where Giannis was on Kyrie, but I guess that's something they could explore more. Like, what is the best thing? Is it Giannis in a one-on-one? Is it Giannis in help? It's probably a mix of all things. But, you know, Giannis was on KD for a bit in this game, and he didn't really make much of a difference, and they're going to need him to. So, yeah, the Nets get game 1. James Harden and that whole thing is a thing. How many minutes did Giannis finish with for this? 35. 35 minutes for Giannis. Not great. Definitely not great. KD was at 40, and he was in foul trouble.